Counter-Narrative News, bringing you daily news today on Tuesday, 28th of February 2023. The Palestinian village neighbouring Nablus, Huwara, has been attacked by scores of settlers backed by the security and military sections of the colonial settler occupation state known as Israel. This is fast on the heels of seeming incessant violent raids conducted by the occupation forces against the residents of Nablus, resulting in many dead and hundreds injured. Most recently, last week, 10 Palestinians were massacred by Israel in Nablus, and scores were injured and sent to hospital. In response to the illegal settlements, illegal in the eyes and in the framework of international law recognized by every member state of the United Nations except the guilty party here that's relevant, i.e. Israel. These settlements are illegal. They conduct themselves an infrastructure of colonial violence, usurpation and annexation, and in response to that, the Palestinian resistance shot dead 2 colonial settlers a few days ago, triggering this white supremacist attack on the village of Huwara, resulting in a lot of property damaged and hundreds of vehicles destroyed. At the same time, negotiations were concluded between the Palestinian Authority and the colonial occupation, that's Tel Aviv and Aqaba in Jordan, in which it seemed that the Israeli negotiating team there promised to stall for the next 6 months the building of illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. However, the Israeli leader Netanyahu contradicts this and says, no, actually, settlement building will continue apace. It seems absolutely sure that the Tel Aviv regime, with backing from its global allies, not least Moscow, Washington and other Western states, is dead set in continuing its very escalating, violent approach to the colonization of Palestinians, triggering further resistance from the Palestinians themselves. Perhaps the colonial occupation entity is figuring that, well, the people of the region are not going to come to the defense of the Palestinians, nor are the regional states, nor is the international balance of forces favorable to the Palestinians, so we will continue to massacre Palestinians and snatch their lands. And what can they do at the end of the day? Going over to social media, or perhaps what should be called white supremacist, colonially old anti-social media, the head of Twitter and leading global capitalist, Elon Musk, has defended Scott Adams from the Dilbert comic strip, who has come out with a whole bunch of anti-black racist comments, including the assertion by Scott Andrews that somehow, quote-unquote, black people are a hate group, end of quote, and, quote-unquote, get the hell away from them being black people. Elon Musk, for his part, argues, quote-unquote, that the media is racist against whites and Asians, end of quotes, a very typically colonial divide and rule strategy of somehow trying to pit, that is, Asians against Africans and Africans against Asians. It's an old story of colonial divide and rule, and it's not appreciated by those committed to an understanding of how racism works and fighting against it. Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter has rehabilitated the Twitter accounts of countless far-right and neo-Nazi personalities and organizations. It's very clear where Elon Musk's political orientation is in this regards, and it quite fits in terms of his modus operandi in him being the head of capitalist companies which appropriate and make super profits out of the labour of black and brown working class throughout the southern continents of the global south and their natural resources there. Staying in the USA somewhat, the US Department of Energy has concluded with quote-unquote low confidence that its studies have resulted in arguing that the COVID outbreak started in a lab in Wuhan, which is widely reported where the first major outbreak of the of COVID contractions took place. It's an interesting timing in relation to escalating war pressure, frankly, from leading Western states, particularly London and Washington, against Beijing. So whatever the case may be, and the study itself, as reported by the Wall Street Journal, argues that that those who concluded this report had quote-unquote low confidence, it still deposits into the public realm a growing notion that somehow China is disproportionately, and in a racist framework and a colonial framework, that China is somehow disproportionately responsible for everything happening in the world that's bad, including COVID. And so to ratchet up anti-China sentiment, or what is known as xenophobia. On this day, that's 27th of February, so that was yesterday, in 1991, the US and its allied forces conducting its war of aggression against the Iraqi state in February the 27th, 1991, conducted and delivered what's known as the Highway of Death, that once that the Iraqi armed forces retreating from Kuwait in a formal manner were then attacked along with other fleeing civilians back into Iraq by the US armed forces, resulting in many, many hundreds of deaths and injuries. It was widely seen as an attack on the laws and regulations of conflict and war and international law, and it was really part of the project at the moment of defeating the actually existing global socialist bloc, the biggest part of the Soviet Union, that the US and Britain wanted, by means of its vicious conflict and aggression against Iraq, it has to be said, allied with a whole bunch of regional states in the region as well. It was a signal that if anyone dared to stand up to the empire, that this is what they would face. As it were, Iraq continued, the Iraqi people and its government continued to stand in defiance against the nearly weekly bombing from 1991 into 2003 and the genocidal sanctions. And then it continued to resist, again, kind of drawing in Western global domination into the quagmire in Iraq after the destruction of the Iraqi state in 2003, allowing the pink tide to rise in Latin America and arguably also giving China and Russia a lot of space for itself in that particular period. And now, finally, on the 27th of February last year, that's 2022, we lost a pioneering musical cultural figure here in London and in England in the drum and bass and jungle culture, which was Skibbadee, or MC Skibbs, or Skibba. MC Skibba is a pioneer of modern drum and bass jungle music, which is a development led by black working class youth, but also incorporating other black and brown and white working class youth, of a new musical genre and articulation of culture, which itself came out of the quote-unquote rave scene in the late 80s. The rave scene itself comes out of the house scene from Chicago, and preceding that, the disco scene in the 70s in the USA, also very much a black working class led cultural phenomenon. So Skibbadee is an MC, is a rapper in the reggae ragga style, which itself continues the kind of chatting MC style of reggae artists who are also partially or wholly based in England and in London, people like Tipper Irie and Smiley Culture. And so what the generation of Skibba and Skibba himself, along with people like Shabba D, Da MC, MC Navigator, Stevie Hyper D, and many other MCs, and of course their DJs and producers, what they did was to fuse hip-hop, rave, soul, R&B, elements of jazz and rap, and fuse it all together in an articulation of that particular generation of working class youth in Britain, and then it became a worldwide industry. Having become a worldwide industry, it loses its grassroots soul to some extent as well. A decade after the pioneering of drum and bass jungle music and culture in the late 80s, early 90s, nearly 2 decades on, by around definitely by 2010, then a new cultural musical genre and community is again pioneered and forged by the black working class youth led community, which was grime, which has itself a whole bunch of offshoots and developments into new genres. But this is something we would like to explore in separate talks and videos. That was Counter Narrative News, bringing you daily news today. I hope that was of interest. Please do feed us criticisms and comments. Thank you to all those who have subscribed to our YouTube channel. Please continue to encourage your networks and friends to subscribe and follow us on counter_CNN on Twitter. We wish you a great day.